morning, everybody. How are y'all this morning? Good, doing good. Hey, thank you so much for being here this morning. It's a beautiful day, and I know there's places that you can be, but I'm glad you're here this morning. We are in the middle of a series called Then Came Sunday. This is our series that we're going to be walking through leading up to Easter, and Easter is next Sunday. Just giving you a reminder. Man, it's a great time to invite friends and family to be with you on Easter Sunday. So that's next week. And man, we are excited to be working our way to Easter, walking through the Easter story. So glad that you're here. Last week, Michael taught in the first week from the perspective of Pilate. Okay, looking at it from his point of view and Jesus on trial. And we talked about how courage oftentimes goes against the crowd. So that's where we were last week. So I'm excited to be teaching this morning and talking to you about our topic this morning. But before that, back in 2012, me and my wife, at the time, we had just gotten engaged. We'd been engaged for a couple of months, and we were getting everything ready for our wedding. We were kind of, doing all the typical preparations, man. We were, making reservations. We were making registries. We were doing all that kind of stuff. And then we came to the point where we were ready to make our first major purchase as a couple that was engaged. We got ready to buy a TV. Okay, that was the first big thing for us, but we were smart about it. We waited until Black Friday, okay? We knew there's going to be a lot of sales, there's going to be a lot of really good deals on TVs. And back in 2012, man, Black Friday was still a big deal. Okay, Black Friday nowadays is like you sit at your house in pajamas and you shop on Amazon for an hour and you're done, okay? Back, 13 years ago, 12 years ago, man, it was war, okay? You had to get ready. You had to go camp out. You had to plan what you were going to do. And so I had done all the research. I looked it up. And we had one good place to buy TVs in my hometown. It was Best Buy. Okay, we had just gotten to Best Buy. And they were going to have the TV, like my dream TV. It was like a 65-inch LED, just amazing TV. Like for me, that was like I'd never seen a TV that big. That was basically a Jumbotron to me. It was amazing. And so we had the money set aside. But the problem was with Black Friday back then, the Best Buy only gave out a certain number of vouchers that you would get at the door to go then redeem for your TV. So you had to be there early, okay? You had to be ready. You did not want to miss the thing that you wanted to get. So, man, we rushed through Thanksgiving lunch. Okay, Grandma, come on, we hurry up. We got to get this pie done. Like, let's just go. It is time. I know this is a holiday, but we've got places to be. So me and Ashley go out after Thanksgiving dinner, and we're on the way. Somebody who will remain nameless wanted to stop by JCPenney because they were having like 75% off on boots. Important, I understand, but you can't watch the Super Bowl on boots. That's all I'm saying. So we went, we battled all the ladies at JCPenney. We got some good deals there, and time was ticking away. Man, it was slipping away. And we finally got out of JCPenney with 2 bags of socks and a new pair of boots. And we make our way to Best Buy. And I am ripping up the road to get to Best Buy as fast as I can. We pull in, we get there, and people are already lining up. They're putting up those little safety barriers to keep everybody in check. And we hop in line. I can't really tell because there's a few people that have kids, there's families, there's people who've been sitting there with lawn chairs, and I'm trying to count and figure out, okay, where am I in the order? Have I gotten here in time? Is this going to be something that I'm able to get? And then they open the door and they start passing out the different things. They're calling out, okay, like, oh, the stereo, this, okay, CD players, whatever, back when we had CD players. And then they come out with the TV, and they're like, all right, 65-inch LED TV. And they start passing out the vouchers to each person who wants one down the line, down the line, down the line. It gets closer, and I can see it. I'm like, here it is, right here. And I'm waiting, and they get to the last voucher, and the person beside me goes, I'll take that. And I was so heartbroken. I was so close. I almost had the TV that I wanted, but I just barely missed it. I missed it by just one person. I was right there, but didn't seem to get it. Now, we miss out on things all the time. Okay, we miss out on very unimportant things all the time. All throughout our day that happens. You'll miss a green light because somebody was sitting on their phone and they weren't paying attention. You'll miss out on getting to Starbucks in time. You show up and they just closed 5 minutes ago and you got to go find coffee somewhere else. So there's so many things that are unimportant that we miss out on that aren't really that big of a deal. But then there's important things that we miss out on sometimes that feel a little heavier, a little more important. You missed out on that job promotion for that position that you'd really been hoping and praying for and working towards. You miss out on seeing a good friend while they're visiting in town, or maybe you've missed a flight to get home from somewhere. That's frustrating. You miss out watching your kids' game, man. Those things are a little more important to us, and when we miss out on those things, we feel and we see how important it is. This morning, we're going to look at the story of someone who was so close, someone who was right there, but missed out on the most important thing ever. We're going to look at the story of someone who was close to Jesus, but somehow missed him. They missed out on Jesus. And we're going to look at this passage because it was obviously a big deal for this person, but it's also a big deal for us because this is true. If we miss Jesus, we miss everything. If you miss out on Jesus, you miss everything. And I'm going to hopefully explain and build a case for that to you this morning. So if you will turn with me to Matthew chapter 26. Last week, Michael was in Matthew chapter 27, so we're just going to be one chapter before that. We're going to set up a little bit of context leading up to what Michael had talked about last week. So we'll be in Matthew chapter 26, and this is going to be a very important, significant moment leading up to the Easter story. When you open Matthew 26, you find Jesus is in the town of Bethany. And what had happened was Jesus was making his way south. He'd been up in the northern part of Israel. He was making his way south to head towards Jerusalem. And on his way there, instead of going the normal route into Jerusalem, he took this big detour, this big loop around, and he cuts across the Jordan River, and is kind of coming into Jerusalem from the side. And so he ends up in this town of Bethany. And that's not by accident. There was no road closed. Jesus intentionally took the route that he did to set up this moment and to be here. There was no accident. This is a deliberate stop on the way to what will be Easter weekend for Jesus, heading into Jerusalem. So Bethany was a small town just outside of Jerusalem. That's where we pick up our story this morning. Matthew 26, starting in verse 1. When Jesus had finished saying all these things, he told his disciples, "You know that the Passover takes place after 2 days, and the Son of Man will be handed over to be crucified." And at the very beginning of this passage, there's something I want to highlight that we often will skip over very quickly. They're 2 days away from the Passover. This is the biggest festival for the nation of Israel. This is where they celebrated when God passed over them in the land of Egypt and spared them because they had the lamb's blood on the door. So the nation of Israel celebrated this every year. So at this very time, with these couple of days leading up to the Friday that started the weekend, there would have been countless lambs being brought into the city of Jerusalem, being ready to be sacrificed. I mean, just picture, you can hear sheep baying everywhere as you're getting closer and closer to the city. And in this moment, we see our ultimate Passover, perfect, spotless Lamb of Jesus also quietly walking towards Jerusalem. It's an amazing picture of his sacrifice and who he is to us. But let's keep reading. Then the chief priests and the elders of the people assembled in the courtyard of the high priest, who was named Caiaphas, and they conspired to arrest Jesus in a treacherous way and kill him. Not during the festival, they said, so there won't be rioting among the people. So the religious leaders, they know Jesus is on the way. Man, he has kept the practice. He has gone to Jerusalem several times, as we see in his ministry. He's been there before, and he is getting ready to come back. So they know he will be there to celebrate the Passover, and they are looking for a time to arrest him, but they want to do it strategically. And so Jesus is on the way. They're expecting him. So let's keep reading. Verse 6, while Jesus was in Bethany at the house of Simon the leper, a woman approached him with an alabaster jar of very expensive perfume. She poured it on his head as he was reclining at the table. Now, this woman, although she's not named in Matthew's gospel, we know, as you read the other gospels, you can look in John, this is named to be Mary Magdalene. Okay, she was a close follower of Jesus. She had been following him for years, and a lot of people actually believe that she was a financial supporter of Jesus. She was constantly giving up goods and giving up things to support Jesus and his disciples. And what she does here has a lot of significance. This moment where she takes this perfume and pours it on Jesus is a very significant action. This alabaster jar, it would have been kind of like a white or maybe even a translucent jar that would have been pretty expensive, filled with expensive perfume. It would have been man, an expensive commodity at this time in history. All right, this wasn't like your buy one, get one from Bath and Body Works, okay? That's not what this perfume or lotion was, okay? This was something that would have been about a year's worth of income in ancient Rome. This was an expensive thing for her to do and to give up and to break. And she understands from all of Jesus' teaching that she has seen and heard that time is coming close to him being killed. She understands that, man, I don't know exactly how this is going to go down, but this is one of my last chances to worship Jesus alive because he's going to Jerusalem. And that's an important thing for us to see, is that Mary wouldn't miss an opportunity. She wouldn't miss a chance to worship Jesus. She didn't want to pass that up. She is always, every time we see Mary in the New Testament, she's always taking advantage of the time she has with Jesus. One of the most famous accounts of Mary earlier in the Gospels, Jesus is having dinner or lunch at somebody's house, and she's just sitting there, just listening to him teach. She's just sitting at his feet listening. And she actually gets kind of in trouble from her sister, who's doing all the things and preparing the house and preparing meals. And in that first story, Mary is just sitting there. She's not doing anything. But then as it gets closer to this event, we see her in Bethany with Jesus. She is living out and acting out on her faith and doing something for Jesus. She is actively worshiping him with her actions. She is acting in this time. And we should notice that she worships Jesus through sacrifice. Mary worships him through sacrifice. She's not singing. She's not talking. She is just sacrificing something to the Lord, something that was very valuable. It's a full picture of what's about to transpire to Jesus, that he will be killed. She is getting him ready for his burial. And what she does it through the time and devotion that she has spent with Jesus in the past. It's an overflow of her love for him that compels her to sacrifice something that cost her. Now, it's interesting to me that when you read this passage, you see Mary. She's the one that's so focused on worshiping Jesus. And she's kind of distraught, it seems, by doing this because she's getting him ready for when he's going to die. And you would think she wouldn't be the only one like that in this situation. She was a follower of Jesus, but she wasn't one of the 12 disciples. She had spent time on and off with Jesus. She had followed him when she could, but she wasn't one of the 12 that had spent every single day for several years with Jesus, day in and day out. The disciples are also there. They are the ones who Jesus had spent the most amount of time with. Man, those were his boys. They were tight. Those were the guys that were with him there too. So let's look at the disciples' reaction to what Mary does. Matthew 26, verse 8 says this: "When the disciples saw it, they were indignant. 'Why this waste?' they asked. 'This might have been sold for a great deal and given to the poor.'" Now again, Matthew, it does not name this disciple that says this. He doesn't point them out, but we can read in other Gospels that the person who says this is the guy named Judas, okay? And Judas is the one who voices his displeasure about what happened with this jar and what Mary has done. And on the surface, you can't really blame him. You can't really get mad at the guy. That's kind of a normal reaction for someone breaking something that's very expensive. Parents in the room, you've gone out to eat with your kids at least once, and then you learned your lesson, okay? You've gone out with your kids, and the waiter has brought a drink to your table, okay, and your kid ordered the drink, and they pick up the drink, and they take a sip of the drink, and then where does your kid put the drink? As close to the edge of the table as possible. I don't know how kids know how to do that. They're just like, oh, right here is perfect. And then what do? They put their little arms on the table, and they're moving around, and before you have time to even say it, like to warn them, their elbow bumps the cup, and that cup goes off the table, and there's a huge mess, okay? That's the kind of reaction that we see from Judas in this moment. He's kind of like, oh, come on, like, we could have used that. Why are we wasting that stuff? That's expensive. That's some money right there. Wasn't there a smarter way? Jesus, to Judas' credit, Jesus was always helping out the poor and the people who were down and trying to make sure people's needs were provided for. He was always meeting people's physical needs for years. So you kind of maybe can get why Judas had this reaction. But let's look at the way Jesus reacts. Let's see his response in verse 10. Aware of this, Jesus said to them, "Why are you bothering this woman? She has done a noble thing for me. You always have the poor with you, but you do not always have me. By pouring this perfume on my body, she has prepared me for burial. Truly, I tell you, wherever this gospel is proclaimed in the whole world, what she has done will also be told in memory of her." Now, this reaction from Jesus is not at all what Judas wanted to hear. This is not the response that he was looking for. Jesus comes to Mary's defense, and he's like, no, this is a good thing. This is the right thing that she should have done. And in fact, man, people are going to tell this story for a long time. So the question that we have to answer is, why is there such a difference between Judas's response to what Jesus does, or to what Mary did, and Jesus' response to what Mary did? Why is there such a difference? And I think the reason is this. Judas was focused on what he wanted Jesus to do, not what Jesus came to do. Judas was more focused on what he wanted to do. Now consider the context of the time. This is where I think Judas's mind was at. Israel had been conquered by Rome years before. Okay, they had an occupying nation with soldiers and governors and people controlling them and making them use their currency. And Israel had waited a long time for the promised king. They had waited a long time for a Messiah. And Jesus was that Messiah, but Judas was not following him for the right reasons. I believe that Judas was following Jesus in hopes that Jesus would set Israel free from the Roman control. I think, honestly, even up to this moment in Bethany, Judas, as a disciple, was like, okay, all right, we're doing some good things. We're feeding some people. Okay, oh, he can raise people from the dead. That's convenient in war. That'll be good, all right? And I think Judas, this whole time, his priority for Jesus, what he is wanting Jesus to do as the Messiah, is to set the nation of Israel free. Even, I bet Judas was like, oh man, we're going towards Jerusalem. That was our capital. That's where we're going to start this whole thing off, Jesus. This is going to be a cool plan. Judas was looking for an insurrection, not a resurrection. His priority was what he wanted Jesus to do, not what Jesus came to do. And that sounds harsh, but we see Judas's heart in the rest of the New Testament. We see that he was the accountant for the 12 disciples. He was the guy in charge of passing out the debit card when it was time to go buy food. And that often Judas himself would dip his hand into the honey jar and take a little bit out for himself and be like, all right, 2 for y'all, 1 for me, 2 for you, 3 for me. Judas was often doing those things only to benefit himself. So that anger and that disgust, that word indignant, man, he was frustrated when he saw something that could have been a benefit for himself instead of a way to worship the Lord. And that's why he missed it. That's why he missed the importance of Mary's sacrifice. Because even though Judas had been around Jesus for years, he somehow missed that Jesus had been telling them about this upcoming event of his crucifixion. Jesus had predicted his own death multiple times. You can look back. It's in Matthew 16. It's in Matthew 17. It's in Matthew 20. Jesus often announced that he would be arrested and killed to pay for the sins of the world. And here's where I really think Judas went wrong. Judas followed Jesus outwardly, but he never surrendered inwardly. He followed him around. He walked around on the earth with him. And that's the big difference between him and Mary. Judas never surrendered inwardly. Judas had been following Jesus for a while, but he had not given him his heart. He was only looking for Jesus to do what he wanted him to do and what he could get from that relationship. He was so close. Judas was so close to the person of Jesus, but somehow he missed it. And this is so important for you and I to get right. This is something that's so important for us to make sure we have the correct belief and understanding about, because it's important because of this truth. Your understanding of Jesus directly impacts your devotion to him. Your understanding of Jesus will impact the devotion that you have for him. Judas was believing and hoping and working towards a hopeful rebellion against the Romans. He was hoping Jesus would be this king that brings up a resurrection. He believed that Jesus was there to set up an earthly kingdom, but he really missed it. He misunderstood what Jesus came to do, which means that at this moment in Bethany, Judas realizes that that's not going to happen. With Jesus talking about his death coming up, he realized that Jesus was not going to do what he expected Jesus to do. And that caused him to lose faith in Jesus. That caused Judas to lose faith in him. And that's not because Jesus did anything wrong. That's because Judas had the wrong expectations. And it really impacts Judas. And we see, as we finish this story, the impacts of the wrong understanding. Verse 14, then one of the 12, the man called Judas Iscariot, went to the chief priests and said, what are you willing to give me if I hand him over to you? So they weighed out 30 pieces of silver for him. And from that time, he started looking for an opportunity to betray him. Now, as I look at this, as I look at Judas' story, and I look at this moment in Bethany, I think it's possible that Judas wasn't really hurting for cash. He wasn't desperate for this money. I think Judas goes and betrays Jesus because he felt like Jesus had betrayed him. He had the wrong expectations on Jesus. Jesus did not do what he expected him to do. And the danger for you and I is if we do not have a correct understanding of who Jesus is, we will ultimately get frustrated with him as Judas did. Not because Jesus is doing anything wrong or that he's in the wrong, but because we have the wrong expectations. If we expect following Jesus means life will be easy, that we won't have any problems, then when problems come up in our life, our first reaction will be to blame the one that's supposed to be taking care of us and that we are following. If we just kind of expect Jesus to be this accessory that we kind of plug into our life and add on, and we don't fully surrender to him, then when we're pressured to cave in for our beliefs or what Jesus has called us to do, man, we will crumble very quickly because he's just an accessory and he's not doing what we want him to do. If we just want Jesus to be Sunday morning, show up, walk in, read, and sing, then we will never fully surrender our lives to him. So, how can we make sure we don't miss Jesus like Judas did? I know all of you are here, not because you want to miss him, but because you want to get Jesus. You want to understand just like Mary did and have that same devotion like Mary. Well, the first thing is this. The first thing to get Jesus is you have to completely let Jesus in. Completely. I'm talking like all access pass to your life, Jesus. All right? I'm a product of the 90s, okay? I'm a child of the 90s, and we had the best TV shows in the 90s, man. We had a TV show called Cops. Y'all remember Cops? Man, what a great show. What a great concept. But on Cops, whenever they would do a search warrant, they'd go banging on somebody's door, okay? And you could always tell the people who like opened the door, like they cracked it and they like peeked through this little crack, and they're talking to the cops through that little crack. That's the people that have something to hide. They're like, oh, no, I'll open it a little bit. I'll talk through this little spot right here. I'm just going to let you in just a little bit. And with Jesus, that's not how that relationship works. That's not getting Jesus. In order for us to get Jesus, man, we have to let him in to every area of our lives, in our relationships, in your schedule, okay, with your spending, with your thought life, with your identity. Jesus did not come here. He did not die on the cross and rise again just to be a part of your life. Okay, he wants to be the absolute center of your life. That is what Mary saw, and that is what Mary did. And once we let him in, the second step is this. We have to wrap our life around Jesus. We have to wrap our life around him. Mary rearranged her priorities to realign with Jesus' mission. Judas, on the other hand, tried to like squeeze Jesus into this little box that he wanted him in. I need you to do this, like Magic 8 Ball. This is what you're here to do. Judas put his own agenda on Jesus. Mary found purpose, but Judas found frustration and regret. So the question for us is, man, what part of your life are you holding back from Jesus? What part of your life are you holding back from him? And what would it look like for you to offer to him like Mary offered that perfume? What would it look like to offer your life to Jesus? Not because it's convenient, not because of your own agenda, but because he is worth it. And here's the encouraging part. I want to encourage you because this story isn't just a warning to look at the story of Judas. This story is also an invitation to live like Mary. Mary didn't just stay far away from Jesus, man. She knew him closely. She listened to him. She spent time with him in his presence. She gave her life to him with her words and the mission of her life. She worshiped him and gave Jesus the important things in her life. And what that did for her is it gave her, man, a very unshakable purpose for her life, a solid foundation for purpose. And Jesus honored that in an amazing way. Okay, the Easter story, Jesus, spoiler alert, he rises from the dead. Didn't know if you knew that detail or not. But when Jesus rises from the dead, the first person he appears to is not the 12 disciples. He doesn't appear to the governor in Rome. He doesn't go back to Pilate. He doesn't go to the ruling officials. He doesn't even go to Caesar himself at that point. The first person who sees the risen Lord is Mary. That is the first person who sees Jesus alive. She found purpose in him. She did not miss him. She got him and had a full relationship with him. That's not an accident that she saw Jesus first. That's a heart that's fully surrendered in the way that Jesus honors that faithful love. So earlier we said that if you miss Jesus, you miss everything. But let me tell you the flip side of that truth. If you get Jesus, you get everything. That's a simple truth. Everything your soul is searching for, man, everything that you were made for connection to God is found in Jesus. That's identity, that's peace, that's hope, it's purpose. Jesus is all of that. He brings meaning to our life, man. He gives us grace that we don't have to earn. He gives us peace that doesn't make sense when life is stressful and chaotic. Mary gave up what was costly to her, and ultimately she gained the most important thing in the world, and that's Jesus. And in getting Jesus, she got everything. Now, was her life perfect? No. Did she still live in a broken world and struggle and have bad days and controversy and difficult things happen to her? Yes. But everything for her was rooted in the person of Jesus, so she had a firm foundation in him. So if you're tired of chasing empty things that don't leave you satisfied, if you're tired of trying to fill your life with things that ultimately will not leave you full, give Jesus everything and you'll find that he's worth it. Because when you get Jesus, you get everything. And this is where it lands for each of us. We have to choose. Are we going to follow Jesus the way Judas did, or are we going to follow Jesus the way Mary did? Will we follow him because of what we hope to get out of him? Will we follow him because we hope he gives us blessings, or he might open doors, or there'll be some comfort or things that we can get out of that relationship? Or will we follow him for what he's already done for us? That's the difference between surface level belief and a deep rooted and surrendered faith. Judas, man, he followed Jesus for a little while. He walked around, he listened to the teaching, he saw the miracles, he was there for all of that. But he had his own expectations, he had his own agenda. He wanted Jesus to fit into his plan and into his box. And when Jesus didn't deliver, Judas got frustrated, he got disappointed, and ultimately that led to something very destructive. Judas allowed bitterness against what he thought Jesus was going to do for him turn into actually betraying Jesus in the end. But Mary, on the other hand, man, she saw Jesus clearly. She saw him for who he was. She followed him not for personal gain, but because of the person of Jesus, because of who he was and what he had done for her. She saw that he is worthy. She saw that he is where we find truth and meaning and purpose. And in that, man, she found a deep and unbreakable faith in Jesus. So the question is for you and I, what will we do with Jesus? Will we chase a version that's made up in our own mind for our own agenda, or will we surrender and follow the real Jesus? My prayer, my hope is for us as a church that we would live like Mary, that we would give up things that cost us for him. We would be willing to sacrifice for Jesus. And in that, to find a real, purposeful relationship, to follow him truly. When we live that way, we don't just find purpose. We find a Savior who satisfies and gives us purpose. When we don't follow him just for blessings and for our own benefit, we follow him for who he is. Because really, when you get Jesus, you get everything. Before you leave this morning, I have a couple of questions for you to think about this week, okay, as we lead into Easter. Number one, first question, why do you follow Jesus? Why are you following him? Is it a get out of hell free card? Is it a status thing? Is it just a little extra accessory for your life? Or why are you following him? Or have you truly surrendered your heart and your life to Jesus? And the second question, what part of you have you not surrendered? If you've already taken that step and said, yes, man, Jesus, forgive me my sin. I want you to be Lord of my life. Except for don't be Lord of this part. My relationships, my money, my career choices, my plans, my relationships, whatever it is, man, what part of your life have you not surrendered? And the last question is this: how do you need to wrap your life around Jesus this week? What part of your life do you need to completely wrap around the purpose and plans that Jesus has for you and what he has called you to do? Not for your own gain, but because of who he is and what he has done for you. Let's pray. Jesus, thank you so much for this morning. God, thank you for this Easter season. God, the celebration, the remembrance, and Lord, the time that we get to spend together, Lord, to worship and to remember your sacrifice on the cross, but Lord, then also ultimately your victory that you bring through your resurrection. Lord, we thank you so much for this example that we see between Judas and Mary. God, I pray that you would help us to fight against the urge to follow you in a way that puts you in a box, in a way that puts you on the own agenda that we have for our life. Lord, help us to have the conviction to fully surrender to you like Mary did. God, to give you the important things in our life, to sacrifice for you and to worship you. Lord, give us the wisdom to see the areas of our life where we have held back from you. And God, help us to fully surrender those things with open hands to you, to worship you and to follow you. We thank you so much for this time together. We thank you for Easter. And it's all in Jesus' name I pray. Amen.